What happens when the world discovers your voice before you are even old enough to understand what fame really means? Angelina Jordan was still a child when millions of people began noticing something unusual about her. She didn't sound like the typical young singer trying to impress an audience. She sounded like someone who had somehow found an entirely different musical era. Years later, that little girl would stand on the America's Got Talent stage and earn a golden buzzer with Bohemian Rhapsody. But here's the part many people miss. That performance was not the beginning of Angelina Jordan's story. It was another chapter in a journey that had started years earlier. And if you compare that young girl with the artist Angelina has become, the difference is impossible to ignore. Long before America's Got Talent, Angelina was already building a reputation in Norway. Her appearance on Norway's Got Talent introduced viewers to a child whose musical instinct seemed far beyond her age. She was drawn to jazz, soul, blues, and classic standards, rather than simply copying the latest pop trends. That choice immediately made her stand out. While many young performers focused on showing how high or how loudly they could sing, Angelina seemed more interested in emotion. She knew how to slow down a phrase, she knew when not to sing, and somehow, even at that age, she understood that a quiet moment could sometimes make a bigger impact than a huge vocal explosion. But there was one performance that would take that unusual talent far beyond Norway. When Angelina performed Fly Me to the Moon, the internet started doing what the internet does best, spreading something people couldn't stop talking about. Viewers were stunned by the contrast between what they saw and what they heard. There was a young girl standing in front of a microphone, but the voice coming through the speakers carried a completely different feeling. It sounded vintage, it sounded controlled, and most importantly, it sounded authentic. The performance reached audiences outside Norway and helped turn Angelina into an international child singing sensation. But viral attention can be dangerous for a young performer. It can create an image that follows you for years. Suddenly, the world expects you to remain the same child it first discovered. Angelina would eventually have to face that problem head-on. The strange thing about Angelina's early success is that she never seemed desperate to sound like everyone else. She leaned into the music she genuinely connected with. That became one of the most important decisions of her career. Instead of abandoning older musical influences to chase whatever was trending, Angelina continued developing the style that made people notice her in the first place. Jazz phrasing, soul, blues, and classic songwriting became part of her musical foundation. That gave her something many young viral performers never get: an identity. The internet may have introduced Angelina to millions of people, but an audience clicking on one viral video is not the same thing as building a career. To survive beyond childhood, she would need to become more than a fascinating young voice. And then came another turning point. Angelina eventually returned to the global spotlight on America's Got Talent: The Champions. By then, she was 13. That may not sound like a huge difference, but musically, it was enormous. She had grown. Her voice had matured, her confidence had changed, and she was no longer simply the little girl people remembered from viral videos. Then she revealed her song choice, Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody. That was a risky move. This wasn't an obscure song that nobody knew. It was one of the most recognizable and demanding songs in popular music. Trying to perform it could easily backfire. Instead of attempting to copy Freddie Mercury, Angelina completely reinterpreted the song. She slowed the energy down and brought it into her own world. And that decision led to one of the biggest moments of her early career. Heidi Klum hit the golden buzzer, sending Angelina directly forward in the competition. For many viewers, that was the moment they discovered her for the first time. But millions of others recognized something different. They weren't watching the beginning of Angelina Jordan's story. They were watching the latest chapter of a story that had already been developing for years. The golden buzzer gave Angelina another massive wave of attention, but it also created a new challenge. Once you become known as an extraordinary child singer, people start asking the same question: what happens when the child grows up? Talent shows are filled with memorable young performers. Far fewer manage to build an identity that survives after the applause fades. That is where Angelina's evolution becomes much more interesting. Growing up in public can be complicated. The audience remembers your younger voice. They remember your appearance. They remember the moment when you first surprised them. But an artist cannot stay 13 forever. Angelina had to allow her sound to mature while still preserving the emotional quality that made her special. Over time, her focus expanded beyond simply performing songs written by other people. She became increasingly involved in developing original music and shaping her own artistic direction. That shift matters because there is a huge difference between being an impressive singer and becoming an artist. A singer can interpret someone else's story beautifully. An artist eventually has to decide what story they want to tell themselves. And that transformation is exactly why looking at Angelina now is so fascinating. The child audiences first encountered was almost defined by the surprise of her age. Today, age is no longer the most interesting thing about her. Her musical identity is. The question is no longer, how can someone this young sound so mature? Instead, it becomes, what does Angelina Jordan actually want to sound like? That is a much harder question. It requires experimentation, it requires confidence, and it means accepting that some people will always prefer the version of you they discovered first. Angelina's career is gradually moving away from the novelty of being a child prodigy and towards something much more difficult, establishing herself as an artist on her own terms. There is another reason her journey stands out. Many viral moments have an expiration date. A video explodes, millions watch it, people react, and eventually another performer takes the spotlight. Angelina managed to turn early attention into something much more durable. Her childhood performances remain widely remembered, but they are no longer the only reason people follow her. Her catalog, her original work, her live performances, and her evolving sound have given audiences new reasons to pay attention. That doesn't mean every step of her career has been predictable or guaranteed. It means she has done the difficult work of moving beyond the first impression. Think about the contrast for a moment. One version of Angelina Jordan became famous because people couldn't believe a child could sing with that kind of feeling. Another version of Angelina is now being judged by completely different standards. People want to know whether her songs are memorable, whether her sound is distinctive, whether she can create a lasting career, whether she can turn early fame into genuine artistic longevity. Those are much harder questions than simply asking whether she can sing, and they are the questions that matter now. So when people say, look at Angelina Jordan now, the real story isn't simply that a little girl grew up. That happens to every child. The remarkable part is that Angelina had to grow up while carrying an enormous musical reputation that began when she was barely old enough to understand it. The world first noticed her because she sounded impossibly mature for her age. Then it watched her earn a golden buzzer on one of the biggest talent shows in America. Now, the most interesting chapter is the one that cannot be scripted by a talent show. Angelina has to decide what kind of artist she wants to become. And maybe that is the biggest difference between the Angelina Jordan people discovered as a child and the Angelina Jordan they are watching today. Back then, the question was, how is this possible? Today, the question is much more exciting. Where can she take this next? Because the golden buzzer was never the finish line. It was simply one of the moments that helped the world notice an artist who was still growing. And now that the child prodigy has grown into a young artist with her own voice, the next chapter may be far more important than the one that made her famous.